Hello and welcome to the Resilience Reef for managing chronic health conditions. I'm Karen Bartle, the host of the show, and my special guest today is Laura Murielle. Hi, Laura, how are you?
Hi, Karen. I'm really good. How are you? I'm so
Yeah,
excited to be here again with you today.
absolutely, yes. So, Laura, just to introduce Laura, she has been on the show before because she shared a story about being a chronic pain management sufferer some time ago, and we talked about her experience of that and how what the kind of things that she had to do in order to manage that chronic pain, because obviously it's very debilitating, it's very life-changing. And we talked about some of the things that you can do with chronic pain from a perspective of someone like Laura, because not only is she a chronic pain sufferer, but she also is a yoga therapist. So she managed to build some great skills to be able to help herself, but also she now helps other people. So this is kind of a follow-up show with that, because I wanted to share some of the things about yoga therapy, because it's not something I'm a great knowledgeable person about. I know what yoga is. I did it in the Southern Ocean on a ship, on the top deck of a ship, and it was the first experience I'd ever had in the freezing cold, all rugged up from head to toe,
I remember when
doing
you told me
yoga.
that. It was a funny scenario for sure.
Oh, it was the most bizarre random event I've ever experienced, right?
Yeah.
But it was good fun, and I enjoyed it. So, but I know there's a difference, and there's got to be a
Yes.
difference between doing yoga, the physical aspect of the yoga,
Mhm.
and for health benefits, I suppose, building flexibility, to being a yoga therapist. So
Mhm.
that's the theme of the show today. I'd like you to introduce yourself a little bit there, Laura, if that's all right, just to
Sure.
tell
Go
people
ahead.
where you
Yeah.
are, who you are.
So do I do it? Do I introduce myself? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I think I did introduce you a little bit, but I think,
Yeah.
sometimes I may miss things out. So I just wanted you to
Sure.
share
Yeah,
a bit
so
more.
for sure, I've been teaching yoga for 6 years already. So there is the yoga, and then there is yoga therapy, which is still yoga, but then we're applying yoga for health conditions, either physical or mental health conditions. So I've been training for that for 3 years. I'm almost done with my training. It's a pretty comprehensive training.
Mhm.
It's called yoga therapy. I'm sure in Australia, it's starting to develop as well. Here in North America, there's been a decade. It's becoming more and more popular because it's actually a complementary healthcare discipline as well.
Okay.
So basically, the difference, what we do in yoga therapy is that I work with individuals. So it's not the same when you go to a group class. You would go, for example, to, a flow class, and then there would be very little room for personal modifications for, if someone is suffering from pain and they need to adjust their position, then there is very little room to do that in a group setting. However,
Mm,
in yoga
yeah.
therapy, we work with the individual, so we take into account any health limitations, any needs, any variations into the poses or movements or breathing exercises that need to be done. For example, there is a lot of room for exercises that can be done on a chair, so chair yoga. Um,
Okay.
and even
Sounds good.
lying down on the floor. So we always adapt to the needs of the person. So that's
Sure.
basically the
Yeah.
difference between a group yoga class and then working with a yoga therapist who is also trained in, I've been trained in physical therapy, in anatomy, in psychology, modern psychology as well. So we have like a pretty comprehensive understanding about chronic health conditions, not just chronic
Yeah.
health conditions, but mental health, about
Yeah.
how the body works, how the mind works, and how we can, sort of help people to build that resilience when there is pain, for example, chronic pain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do people, is there an expectation that people already have done yoga or know about yoga to be able to come to a yoga therapist?
Not at all. Not at all.
Mm.
It's imagine it would be the same when you go to see, a physical therapist, a physiotherapist. It's the
Mm.
same thing when you go to see a yoga therapist. You're not supposed to, to be able to do any sort of specific movement, or, some people
Okay.
approach me and do I need to be flexible for this? And it's 100% not needed at all.
Okay, that's
Because
good.
let's say, for example, if I'm working with someone who has chronic pain, their mobility might be very limited. So this is why, they come to me, just,
Yeah.
so that they can get a personalized plan that's going to help them to not only, live and manage the pain, but also find ways, how to identify those flare ups, those, relapses when they
Mm.
happen. Because there is a lot of body awareness that is going to be, we're going to develop that throughout the sessions.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And this can be done, I think we talked about this can be done online as much as it can be done physically, can't it? Because you're instructing from a distance, but it's
Mhm.
still it has the same effectiveness, same yeah, success.
Yeah, I would say, ideally, the ideal context would be, that one-on-one in-person exchange, because there is a lot of,
Okay.
especially the energy exchange. And maybe sometimes if I do hands-on, of course, ideally it would have to be in person. But yes, 100%, it can be online as well. It can be as effective. And the reason why is because what I'm going to offer is a plan for the person, is a self-care plan that they can, easily incorporate into their day. So it's mostly my work, I feel, has a lot to do with empowering others to find
Okay.
self-care tools that they can incorporate into the day. So yes, of course, that's why, online sessions work as well. And I've been doing this for the last year, so I know it
Oh,
works.
great.
Yeah.
And that's great for people because if you have a chronic health condition, we know as people who are suffering and have suffered from chronic illness, that it's not
Mhm.
always easy to get out either psychologically or physically because we just don't have the motivation or there's some physical
Totally.
stuff going on which means we just physically can't get out to see people. And
Yes.
so it means that people have access to you. They may come see you physically, but they may also, at times, not be able to do that because it's just not
Mhm.
possible. And it's better to have a online,
Mhm.
session than it is to completely miss a session and not keep it up. And is that the
Yeah.
thing, like with physio and things like this? There's an expectation that once you start it, you've got to kind of keep. You've got the self care is so important, isn't it, in between sessions to be able to
Totally.
to manage
To
that.
see the
Yeah.
results. Yes, totally. And as you said, I loved what you said about, that online option for those people when there is chronic pain, or, chronic fatigue, or this sort of, fibromyalgia, this type of chronic illnesses. It's hard to, sometimes we lack the motivation to just go out. And, if you're in pain, you're mostly going to want to stay at your home or in bed if you can all day until you feel better, right? So
Yeah.
yes, of course there is this, suitable option to do it online. And I would say there is a big piece as well where I'm going to offer a plan for the person, but then it's up to the person if they want to keep that self-care, on a daily basis, or just when they can.
Okay.
Sometimes, I've had people tell me, Laura, yesterday I was so tired. I could not do anything. Not even, I could
Mm.
not even do my breathing exercise because I was feeling,
Yeah.
really low energy and, demotivated. So I totally get it. But yes, for sure, there needs to be some sort of, and it doesn't have to be, a lot of work or something that it's doesn't feel right, but there needs to be a sort of learning how, we can apply tools for self-care, because you might know
Yeah.
that it's so important. And for one person it might mean a different thing. For some other person it might involve, active movement. But we need to find that, personalized plan for everyone, so that you can keep that routine, as more regular as you can, right?
Yeah, keep
Yeah,
the momentum going. Yeah,
exactly.
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. So let's then imagine someone maybe that you would work with who has, let's stick to perhaps chronic pain because we don't
Mhm.
have a lot of time on this show. And that is a
Yes.
common, that it's the biggest burden in society for individuals and workplaces and governments,
Mhm.
health services, because, everybody seems to have some kind of pain at some point in their
Unfortunately.
lives. And
Yes.
some people have a whole lot of pain. But let's just imagine they have, back pain, for example, or some kind of,
Back
maybe
pain.
it's not
Yeah.
so debilitating that they can't do things, they can't go to work and they can't live a life, but it is seriously getting in the way of a lot of good things that they want to do.
Yeah. Mhm.
Are there some general principles of yoga therapy that you would typically recommend for people in that kind of situation? Just to give
Mhm.
people an example of what yoga therapy is.
Sure. And I loved what you said about maybe general, methods or tools because it's so individual that the plan that I will give to one person that has back pain is going to be very different from someone who has back pain and diabetes, for example. But
Yeah.
let's say, the general tools that we use in yoga therapy are, of course, asanas, which are postures, mindful movement, breathing techniques, relaxation techniques as well. I was trained, I had a lot of hours in Ayurveda as well. So I can, give those. Tools so that you can manage your diet as well in terms of from an ayurvedic perspective. There is a lot you can do in terms of diet and
Yeah.
specifically when there is an inflammatory component to that pain. But let's say for someone who has low back pain, probably what I would advise is, first off, see if you can, maybe if you work on the computer for very long hours during the day, see if you can take more breaks. And it might seem something, a tiny
Mhm.
exercise, or not even an exercise,
Yeah.
just bringing awareness to it. But
Yeah.
some people, they would go for the whole morning without taking any breaks, maybe 3 4 hours straight sitting on their desk. And I would probably just bring up that question into their routine and say, do you think you could take more breaks, maybe every half an hour or just every hour? And then probably I would give them some stretches and breathing that they can do when they take those mini breaks. I also teach exercises that they can do sitting on their desk, stretches that is going to, especially for
Mm.
the low back pain, folding over the desk and maybe placing the hands on the desk so that you can get like a nice, lengthening in the spine. Some mindful breathing so that you can orientate and direct, the breathing into the low back. As I said, there is so many things, and probably I would
Mm.
give some exercises lying down on the floor because this is, if excruciating low back pain, I'm sure that you would feel better lying down on the floor. So probably I would start from there. But the yoga therapy, especially in the first session, I will do an assessment just to see how the person is, how they manage the pain, because sometimes
Yeah.
people have great management techniques already, and maybe, build up from there. And I'd like to know as well where the pain is coming from. So I would, ask questions. I'd make, the person just share with me any sort of injuries or any cause that they think that it's, might be um, aggravating the pain. So I try to understand the cause and the person and how the pain gets manifested in the person, because as I said,
Yeah, of course.
the pain is manifested in very different ways according to the person, right?
It is. It's a very individual thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Any kind of
totally.
chronic illness, no two conditions, even if they're the same
Mhm.
diagnosis, are ever the same because we live
Absolutely.
different ways. It will, you may be in a job all day where you're standing up or you're walking compared to someone who's sat at a desk all day. That's a very different, isn't it? A very different plan
Mhm.
of how you can make that better,
Of
you know?
course, and the cause, it's so different as well because it could be some, musculoskeletal, from your maybe some structural thing going on, misalignment in the spine. It
Mm,
could be scoliosis, it could be a past injury, it could be an underlying health condition going on. So there is so many causes,
mm.
behind the pain. So that's why first I really like to get that, connection with the person, and I just encourage them to share with me anything that they find could help me understand what the pain is coming from.
Yep, I understand now the difference. It's very obvious, isn't it? It's very obvious once you know what the difference is between being in a group and laying on the floor and doing
It
all
is,
these
right?
crazy
Yeah.
exercises to sitting in
Yeah.
front of a trained person who is more of a he's a therapist
Hmm.
and wants to understand the holistic being of what's going on within you and outside of you environmentally as well.
Hmm.
That's a very personal experience, which is
Exactly.
something I do too. So I get that. I completely understand that now.
And there
Thank
is
you for
actually,
explaining.
yes, there is group settings actually in yoga therapy. So let's say, if there is a small group, I've taught, let's say, for example, yoga therapy for neck pain. And but it needs to be a small group where I am able to
Mm,
offer that personal attention and modifications. That doesn't happen necessarily in in a big, like,
of
general
course, yeah.
yoga class, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
everyone's different. Well, sometimes I've seen yoga therapists do certain things for pregnant women or certain things for
Yes.
particular
Yes.
issues, and that's if that's their interest and their special interest, then I think
Hmm.
that's good. But if it's just a general group of people with chronic health conditions, I can't see that necessarily working too well
Yeah.
personally. But I would try it, but I'm not sure
Of
everyone would get the
course.
same benefit from the same program in that way. Yeah.
Yes.
But that's awesome. I really appreciate you coming on and describing the difference and actually what you do, because I think it is a great. Like I said, so many people are experiencing chronic illness and
Yes,
need
unfortunately.
different
Yeah.
approaches to. We're expected these days to manage our own conditions ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, and the therapist or any clinician is not going to do it for us in between the times that we see
No,
them. So
exactly.
we
And
need those skills to do it ourselves.
yes, and there is a very important component as well in yoga therapy. I haven't mentioned it yet, but is we work with the breathing. So it's not only about, engaging in movements and stretches, but it's also doing it. So it's coordinating the movement with the breath. And there is wonderful
Okay.
things that happen when you move with your breath, just because it's, in yoga therapy, we're also working with the energy in the body, right? So when you connect the movement with the breath, there is amazing room for healing that can happen in that space versus other type of complementary therapies. I would say this is one of the main differences from yoga therapy. Yeah, it's working with the
Okay.
breath. Yeah.
Yeah, and the physical aspect, because a lot of like meditation, I don't get
Hmm.
on too well with meditation. It doesn't suit me, but that involves a lot of breathing and focusing on the breathing, but you don't really move with it. You sit incredibly still. Whereas
Yes.
I can imagine yours is quite different to that.
It is different, and I find so interesting what you said about it is hard to sit and meditate, and it happens to a lot of people, especially when there is pain, because it's so hard to just, like, disconnect from everything and then saying, all right, I'm just going to sit and meditate, because that's probably not going to happen. If you
Mm.
are in pain, your pain is going to is going to stop you from actually, getting deep into meditation, even starting meditating. So I would say,
Mm.
before getting into a state where your nervous system can, be in a more regulated state where you can actually tolerate what's going on in your body,
Mm.
I would say like previous movement is very useful for that, because you're
Yeah.
sort of channeling the energy when you are moving. You're moving, the oxygen within your body, within your organs, and then you're keeping your mind focused on that body awareness. And then once you have moved that probably excess tension, or even when there is pain, you have given, let's say you have low back pain, if you have given that attention to your low back, you have breathed into the low back for maybe 10-15 minutes before, then you might be ready for meditation afterwards. But
Yeah.
that's the big difference. I've heard so many people saying, I cannot sit for meditation because it's not for
Yeah.
me, or because I'm in pain, or because I have a lot of anxiety going on and I just cannot. So it's totally natural. It's very normal. And thank you for mentioning that, because it's so common nowadays.
It is. It's incredibly hard to clear your mind of anything when you have,
It
chronic pain
is.
going on. I need to move. I need to do things, and it's a
Yes,
nice distraction because while you're moving, you're not thinking about what's in your mind so much.
that's it. That's it. Yes. Totally. Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, this has been a great show. It's been very informative, very educational. And so if people want to connect with you, Laura, because if you're online, you can connect with anyone in the world, right? So what's the
Yeah,
best
that's
way?
a
I've
good
put your
thing
website up
about
on there. So
technologies.
it's feelyogatherapy.com. And are there any other good ways for people to connect with you?
Yes, so I keep the same name. That's the name of my practice, is Feel Yoga Therapy. I'm in Facebook, I'm in Instagram as well. And as you said, my website, feelyogatherapy.com. That's how people can reach me.
Great.
Yeah. So if they watch the show and they have any questions, I guess they could ask you as well. And then, because we'll be in touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, well, thanks so much for joining us. And yeah, keep up the good work. You're doing a sterling job.
Thank you, Karen, for having me. It's been a pleasure, and always, sharing tools with especially
Yeah,
people who are suffering from pain. I find I like to, offer that hope to people, because there is hope, and there is new ways and different ways how you can learn to live with the pain that are not going to be as unpleasant as they are.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you are such an enthusiast. If there's anyone you need to talk to about yoga therapy, you are the person for sure.
Well, I'm
You're very
happy.
passionate about it. And I've used
Thank
it
you.
yourself. So you're a good advocate for what you do, for sure.
Thank you,
All right. Well,
Karen.
thanks. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And I hope to see you again
Thanks,
soon.
everyone. Thank you, Karen. Take care.